Hey everyone, welcome back to your go-to channel for all things related to currency intel, global financial shifts, and the latest updates on international monetary movements. Today is Friday, April 11th, 2025, and there's a lot to unpack. From the dinar to the dong to other global financial developments, the picture is becoming clearer, but also more complex. We're going to dive deep into what's going on and what it might mean for currency holders and investors, so let's jump right in. Bond market insights and currency exchange timing. Let's start by talking about what's going on with bonds, as that's a key indicator for many. We've been hearing that bond meetings this week have gone exceptionally well. Several sources, including some inside MS, have mentioned that the first group of participants could be funded as early as the middle of next week. Now, for those of you tracking this situation closely, you'll know that bond funding is often seen as a precursor to bigger events, like currency exchanges. If funding happens on schedule, we could be looking at currency exchanges potentially following soon after. While there's no confirmation yet, this is a significant development, and it's something that could spark some important movement in the coming days. This timing also aligns with previous predictions that spring 2025 might be a key moment for currency holders to finally see some action. Of course, we need to keep a level head. Nothing's set in stone until it happens, but these developments are certainly worth watching closely. Frank 26's advice on currency exchanges. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about strategy. Frank 26, who's always on top of the game, shared an interesting take on currency exchanges this week. He asked the question, why would you go to many banks to exchange your currency? I don't trust just one bank. Frank's analogy here is pretty powerful. He compared the situation to military tactics, saying, don't send all your troops to one location. If you're holding dinar or dong, this is an important point to think about. The core idea here is that diversification can be key to managing risk effectively when you're preparing to exchange your currency. Frank also raised the point that with all the potential volatility around the dinar's revaluation, it's wise not to put all your eggs in one basket. His perspective is something many might want to consider as they make their own plans. Spreading out exchanges across multiple banks or exchange locations could help mitigate potential risks associated with any single entity. Pimpy's take on Iraq's digital future. Let's now take a closer look at Iraq, as it continues to dominate headlines in the currency world. Pimpy, who's known for keeping things grounded, brought up an interesting point regarding Iraq's digital transformation. He's noticed that Iraq is pushing hard to go digital and is making moves toward a central bank digital currency, CBDC. Pimpy's logic here is solid. If Iraq is planning a digital currency rollout in the near future, why would they make any major changes to the paper dinar now? It doesn't make much sense to revalue the dinar at a time when Iraq is preparing to shift to a completely new monetary framework with a digital currency. If Iraq is that close to completing this technological shift, it seems likely that they'll hold off on significant changes to the traditional currency until the digital version is ready for launch. This argument is one that adds some caution to those expecting immediate action. The digital future seems to be moving fast, and if Iraq's currency reform is tied to that digital transition, it might be smarter for investors to expect digital reforms first, rather than a traditional revaluation. Iraq's economic shift, away from oil dependency guru. Samson also provided some important context regarding Iraq's economic strategy. According to a major article he referenced, Iraq is nearing the end of its renter economy, which means they're starting to realize that they can't rely solely on oil revenues. Oil still represents about 90% of Iraq's national revenue, but the government is making a deliberate effort to diversify its economic base. Samson pointed out that Iraq is looking to reduce its dependence on oil and shift toward other sectors, including construction, technology, agriculture, and finance. This is a pivotal moment for Iraq, because if they can successfully reposition their economy away from oil, it could provide the foundation for a more stable and diversified economy. From a currency perspective, this is a critical development. If Iraq can successfully create new sources of revenue that aren't tied to the volatile oil market, it might provide more stability for the dinar, making it a much more attractive investment and paving the way for currency reforms that are based on long-term sustainability rather than short-term resource-based dependency. Weekend work and potential prep for currency exchanges. Let's turn to some speculation and insider reports. There's been some buzz that wealth management teams and redemption center personnel are scheduled to work this Saturday, but not Sunday. While there's been no official confirmation of what they're preparing for, many are connecting the timing to the end of tax season and the possibility that these teams are getting ready for something currency-related. Now, I'll say this, we don't have definitive proof that this is tied to currency exchanges. However, the fact that these teams are working over the weekend could mean that there's preparatory work happening for something important. If the timing is right, it could also indicate that currency holders are getting ready for further steps in the exchange process. This is one of those things that's worth watching closely. Sometimes these smaller operational shifts can signal something bigger on the horizon, so we'll keep you updated if we get any more concrete information. Film News Reality Check. Are we really close? On the flip side, Film New raised a valid concern in the conversation. He asked, "Does this really sound like an any-minute-now situation?" It's a great question and one that deserves a moment of reflection. Film New believes that Iraq still has quite a bit of ground to cover before a full revaluation can realistically happen. It's easy to get swept up in the excitement of daily updates, but when you step back and look at the overall economic situation, there are still key steps Iraq needs to complete before any major currency changes take place. Whether it's finalizing agreements with international financial institutions or ensuring internal economic reforms are fully in place, Iraq isn't quite in the green light zone yet. And Film News caution serves as a reminder to keep a level head. Trump's push to lower oil prices, global impact. Let's zoom out for a moment and consider the bigger picture. Claire pointed out that President Trump's push to lower oil prices could have serious consequences for Iraq. If oil prices drop significantly, it could devastate Iraq's economy, given that oil revenue makes up the vast majority of their budget. This could cause a major financial squeeze for Iraq, making it more difficult for the government to follow through on any plans to implement currency reforms. If oil prices continue to fall, Iraq might have to shift its focus to stabilizing its finances rather than prioritizing currency revaluation, and that would certainly delay any immediate revaluation efforts. So, while we're excited about potential developments, it's important to recognize that global oil trends could play a massive role in Iraq's ability to move forward with plans for its currency and broader economic transformation. Militiaman's economic logic. Housing and currency reform. Militiaman offered some critical insights into Iraq's infrastructure needs. He mentioned that Iraq is in need of around 4 million new housing units to meet growing demand. That's an immense project, and one that would be far cheaper to carry out if Iraq had a stronger exchange rate. Currently, the dinar is at around 1,310 per US dollar, but if the exchange rate were to improve significantly, housing costs would be dramatically lower. This is a powerful argument in favor of revaluing the dinar sooner rather than later, as it would enable large-scale development while also giving Iraq a more competitive economic standing in the global market. Final thoughts and dong update. To finish up, let's briefly touch on the Vietnamese dong. As we've reported previously, ISA still expects the dong to be valued around $2 to $2.25 in the near future. Meanwhile, Bruce has mentioned that redemption center screens are now showing both dinar and dong rates, and those rates seem to be creeping upward. This could be a positive sign for anyone holding Vietnamese currency, as it suggests that the dong could be closer to seeing upward movement. Wrap up. Stay informed, stay prepared. That's your comprehensive rundown for April 11th, 2025. There's a lot to digest, and as always, it's important to stay grounded. Whether you're a believer, a skeptic, or just along for the ride, it's essential to stay informed and prepare for whatever comes next. If you found this update useful, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Are you optimistic, cautious, or just waiting for concrete action? Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next update.